Good evening. I'm Cantor Devorah Avery, and on behalf of the clergy, staff, and leadership here at Congregation Har HaShem, I welcome you into this sacred space, our shared home, as we gather to remember, to mourn, and to hold one another on this Yom HaShoah. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to orient you to our space. There should be no emergency, but in case, we have emergency exits here and here, and when we leave this space, we'll go out the way we came in. And just to kind of hold this space, we also ask that you silence your phones. Tonight we gather with tender hearts. We're especially mindful of Pat and David Friedland, who I'm not sure are here yet. They are. Wonderful. We're especially mindful of Pat and David Friedland, wife and son of Arnold Friedland, Zichrono Livracha, who passed away just a few weeks ago. We hold Arnold's memory close, as he was a beloved member of this community, of Congregation Har HaShem, and a survivor of the Holocaust, and a bearer of story. May his memory continue to be a blessing and a source of strength. As we enter this sacred time of remembrance, may we allow ourselves to be present to the weight of memory and to the quiet resilience that lives within it. We'll begin with the voices of our youth choir, offering Ashrei Hagafrur by Hannah Senesh, words born of courage and sacrifice, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, there's a spark that refuses to be extinguished.
something like starting with a little clapping thing. Right, that was so beautiful. Well, Bruchim Habaim, and welcome. And thank you for joining us this evening in our annual Boulder Community Yom HaShoah commemoration. To every one of you who came tonight, whether you carry the names of family members lost, whether you come as a neighbor or ally, whether you come because something in you simply knew you needed to be here, you belong in this room. Your presence is itself an act of remembrance. I come to this evening carrying something personal. I am a child of Holocaust survivors, and I grew up in the particular silence and the particular intensity that filled my home shaped by the Shoah, where what was not said was sometimes as present as what was. From my earliest years, 4 words became the compass of my life. Never forget, always remember. Not as a slogan, as a covenant, as the Ner Tamid, the guiding light I was handed, and the message I have tried every day to honor. So that covenant has taken me to places I could not have imagined as a child. For years now, I have returned in November to Auschwitz-Birkenau as a rabbi in residence with the Zen Peacemakers Bearing Witness Retreat. For 6 days, we do not lecture, we do not hold conferences, we sit. We sit on the ground, in the silence, and we listen to the soil. We bear witness to what was and to what is, to the shadow on the snow-covered ground, to the rusted, hanging, haunting wires that kind of form the space, to the impossible quiet of a place where 1.5 million human beings were murdered. Every afternoon, we read names of those who perished at the selection site. When we sing, we pray, we recite Kaddish in multiple languages. We wrestle with how we as a human species could have allowed such an atrocity to occur. And we try to understand. We grieve together, descendants of victims and of perpetrators, along with those who attend from all corners of the world to be present to the stories. We allow the place to enter us rather than trying to master it with our minds. Every time I return, I am broken open in a new way. And every time I return, I am more convinced that this is what the world requires of us. Not to understand the Holocaust from a safe distance, but to let it land, to let it ask something of us. Over 80 years ago, the world was in the grips of darkness so deliberate, so systematic, so vast, that it can still stop us cold when we truly let it. 6 million Jews, 1/3 of our entire people, and alongside them, Roma, disabled people, political prisoners, LGBTQIA individuals, millions more whose lives were deemed by murderous ideology to be expendable. But they were not expendable. They were Miriam, who loved to dance. They were Shlomo, who argued about Talmud with great passion and greater laughter. They were the child who had not yet learned her own name. They were doctors and dreamers, bakers and poets and grandmothers and rabbis and troublemakers and mystics and skeptics. They were, in every sense, us. So tonight, we say their absence out loud. We do not look away. And tonight we are graced with a living witness, Anita Meyer-Budding. who was a hidden child, sheltered in the Netherlands while the Nazis occupied and hunted her people. She survived in silence and in shadow, carried by the courage of those who risked everything to protect her. And she is here with us tonight to speak from the inside of that history, not as a chapter in a textbook, but as a life, a whole extraordinary life. So please hold that with reverence when you listen to her. You are about to receive something irreplaceable. We live in a moment when the phrase "never again" is tested not as a slogan, but as a living obligation. Anti-Semitism is rising. Survivors are leaving. The direct chain of memory grows shorter every year. And that is precisely why we gather like this one. This matters. This is precisely why you are here today. So tonight we will remember together. We will hear testimony. We will sit with one another in the intimacy that comes from sharing grief and hope in the same breath. And we will leave, I hope, not emptied, but filled with the weight of what we carry, but also with the extraordinary privilege of being the ones who carry it forward. The Talmud teaches, whoever saves a single soul, it is as if they have saved the entire world. Take that in. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for refusing to forget. Never forget. Always remember. Yizkor, we will remember.
We Jews use light to symbolize so many things: the beginning and ending of Shabbat, the arrival of our holidays and our festivals, and we use light to remember those who are no longer with us. I like to think that the light in a yahrzeit candle represents the light that the person who has departed this earth has left behind, because they were here and they made some kind of difference to someone or to some ones. We light candles, 6 candles tonight, 1 for each million Jews murdered at the hands of the Nazis. Just imagine the blinding light that could emerge from these 6 million departed souls. I would like to invite Joseph Juhas and Olive Spahn, Sarah Schechtman and Ella Rosenbaum. You can come up, guys. David Friedland and Sienna Leone, Michelle Goldman and Emmett Lowe, Otter Verdoner and Ezra Margolis, Anita Meyer-Budding and Dahlia Shapiro to the front to do a reading and to light the 6 candles. Again, 1 candle for 1 million souls.
Memory. Despite everything, life is full of beauty and meaning. May this candle honor the beauty of the lives lost and ensure their stories remain alive in our memory.
Resilience. I know that somewhere inside me there is something that will never desert me again. May this candle inspire us to remember the resilience of those who endured unimaginable hardship and their strength to carry on.
Spiritual strength. There is really a deep well inside me, and it dwells with God. Sometimes I am there too. May this candle honor the faith and spiritual courage that sustained so many during the Holocaust.
Compassion. We should be willing to act as a balm for all wounds. May this candle remind us of the need to heal and comfort others in the world, often marked by pain.
Humanity. One must keep in mind that every action of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable. May this candle affirm our commitment to human dignity and our rejection of hate in all its forms.
Hope. Ultimately, we have just one moral duty: to reclaim large areas of peace in ourselves. May this candle shine as a beacon of hope, calling each of us to bring shalom v'shalamut, peace and wholeness to ourselves, to our communities, and to the world.
Let us just take a couple deep breaths in silence. 3 generations. There is a particular kind of courage that belongs to children. Not the courage of soldiers or resistors, though that courage existed too, but the courage of a small child who learns, without fully understanding why, that she must be very, very quiet, that she must trust the strangers who are hiding her, that her life depends on staying still, staying small, staying invisible, while the world outside the door becomes more dangerous by the day. Anita Meyer Budding was that child. Born in 1929 in the Netherlands, Anita survived the Holocaust as a hidden child, sheltered from the Nazi occupation that consumed her country and murdered the vast majority of Dutch Jews. She was taken to a safe house in southern Holland by Anna Gisela Sonlein. Anita kept a diary recounting the passing days while she was in hiding, and she donated this diary to the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York City. Anita's story has reached far beyond this room. She's even featured in a documentary entitled "We Dare to Write," about Jewish teenagers who kept diaries during the Holocaust. Young people who, in the midst of unimaginable darkness, picked up a pen and refused to let their inner lives be erased. The people who hid her risked their own lives to do so, and she carried the weight of that survival and that debt of love with her across a lifetime and across continents, from the Netherlands to Canada to New Mexico, and now here to us in Boulder. Hidden children occupy a unique and tender place in Holocaust memory. Many were too young to fully comprehend what was happening, and yet their bodies knew, their silence knew. And in the decades since, they have found their voices and given the rest of us a window into a part of that history that is both intimate and profound. Anita has chosen to be here tonight, to speak, to trust us with her story. That is not a small thing. So let us please receive Anita with the fullness of our attention and the openness of our hearts. Let us welcome Anita Meyer Budding.
Thank you for your kind words. I'm really flattered to be here tonight and tell a little bit about my story. I apologize to many of my good friends that are here that have heard this story before. This, however, my story doesn't change. It's over 80 years old, and stories don't change. So I have a 2-hour version, a 1-hour version, and tonight it has to be abbreviated. So I'll try and touch on the the lowlights of my story. As you heard, I was born in the Netherlands in 1929 in just a normal upper middle class family where one lived just like anybody else in the Netherlands. Nothing special, nothing was missing. I went to public school. Everything was just perfect for anybody that lived in The Hague. But things changed. In May of 1940, the Netherlands were invaded by the German army. It only took this small country. They couldn't really last very long with their armies. In 4 days, they had to capitulate to Germany, to the German army that just in no time occupied all the streets in the Netherlands. Things drastically changed. The first year was fairly normal. I went to public school, had friends. I knew some were Jewish because they had to stay home on Jewish holidays just like I had to, but for the rest you would never know if anybody was Jewish or not. But things got worse by the day because in the beginning of 1941, the first year that the occupation was there, I was able to finish grade school, and I took an exam to enter high school. But there was no high school for Jewish children anymore because it was forbidden for Jewish children to go to public schools, and also it was forbidden for Jewish teachers to teach in a regular public school. Well, how did they know if you were Jewish? Well, of course, most people were registered either with a synagogue or with the Jewish council of each city. There was no really escaping, and nobody knew that it was going to be so bad as it actually turned out to be. So we had to buy, believe it or not, the Star of David, the yellow star that every Jew had to wear that was 6 years or older on the left side of their chest. And even boys in physical education that didn't wear a shirt had to wear the star on their shorts. And the funny part was everything was rationed in Holland. We had to pay and actually everything was rationed, so we had also coupons for textiles. We had to give points to get our stars. But anyway, what were we to do? Let me tell you first what was all happening besides not being able to go to public school anymore. Jewish people were not allowed to active participate in any sports organization. We couldn't go to the movies, we couldn't go to the opera, we couldn't go to the theater. We couldn't go to restaurants. The most common signs were verboten for Juden, which meant, for Jewish forbidden. You couldn't shop unless you shopped between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. What if you decided all of a sudden, I need some aspirin? You go to the drugstore at 11 o'clock in the morning, and the guy from the National Social Bond would recognize you, follow you. You were never getting home anymore because they would pick you up and you were sent off to concentration camps. But let me get back to the schools. The Jewish teachers could not teach in public schools. The university professors, they were without a job. So the most logical thing was to establish a Jewish high school, well, also grade schools, but I was no longer interested in grade school. So it took about 2 or 3 months before we finally did get a building, and we established a normal high school. But the only thing was the building that the Gestapo had assigned to us was way off in an area where nobody would live or anything. And as we were not allowed to use any public transportation, no trams, no buses, no trains, and we also had to hand in our bicycles. So what was left? Our feet. We had to walk for more than an hour going and going back another hour. We had to carry books for 6 subjects because we didn't have any lockers in our schools. But we made do. Everything seemed possible. You had to deal with it. But things changed a little further when the doorbell rang one day, and there were two German soldiers with guns facing when my father opened the door. And he said, "Mr. Mayor, I'm very sorry, but you have to be out of this house. We'll confiscate it. You can take whatever you can carry." Mind you, it was one suitcase, no rollers. You had to carry it. Where did we go? We had no place to go. We had to be out of this house within 24 hours. Imagine. And now if you move, you make plans for months and months, but there was no planning. Luckily, my father was on the board of directors of the one and only Jewish old age home. And as it so was, they had a couple of rooms available where we got a room for my sister and I, and a room for my parents, and they welcomed us, and we were able to live there. But that didn't last forever either, because if you know the geography of the Netherlands, the whole west coast is basically a coastline. There was a new rule that all the Jews had to be out of the coastline in the Netherlands. Well, we were in The Hague, which is a reason we had to leave. So we then had to go to Amsterdam because there was no other place really in Holland to go. We were lucky. My father had a cousin who lived in an apartment in a very nice area in Amsterdam. They had 3 bedrooms, and it was a childless couple. So they had 2 rooms available, and they were nice enough to take us. So we went to Amsterdam, and it's funny, totally am blinded. I don't know how we got there, because we were not allowed on trains, but we must have had a special permit. But there's nobody that can answer my question anymore, how we got there, but we did. So there again, when I got to Amsterdam, I had to look, well, where's another high school? And the same situation in Amsterdam was there, what they had done in The Hague. They had made a lyceum, actually it was called there. And that was the school where Anne Frank was as well, in the same grade that I was. She was born in June of 29, and I was July 29, so we were overlapping. But people ask me, how was she? What was she like? I really don't know that much, because she was one of 25 kids. And, you know, her fame really started after she died and they found her diary. And she was just one out of kids in the classroom. And you could never get together after school because you had to walk home. In Amsterdam was the same way. It was about an hour's walk. And you had to be in your house by 6 o'clock at night. And you come out of school around 4 in the afternoon. You never got together. You didn't have any social contact with classmates or anything of that. And the sad part also was, every day there were fewer kids in school. And then all of a sudden, the geography teacher was no longer there, or the math teacher didn't show up. And you always wondered, and you have never found out, did they go into hiding, or did they get arrested that evening? Because things didn't get very nice. The transports had really started. So you may do with whatever you could do. But then more things happened. They formed a ghetto in Amsterdam, a Jewish ghetto in the eastern part of Amsterdam, where people really weren't living anymore. They were not houses that would go on the market or anything. And the only advantage was we didn't have to look for a place. We were assigned a place. We were assigned a place on the 4th floor, Christian de Wetstraat, number 27. I'll never forget. And the funny part was, I took my 9-year-old grandson to Holland, and he saw the place where we lived. When we stood there, he looked up, way up, because it was pretty high. Oma, did you really live there? It was amazing. You know, they're used to different circumstances than they were there. But we lived there, and things got more scary and more scary. Well, the trouble was that every night you hear trucks, screaming children, crying parents, because the Gestapo, whatever, they came and hauled away the people. We thought, when is our turn? But there was one way of being able to escape a little bit. All the Dutch people had a threefold personal ID card, and the Jewish people had a big, or about this big a J on the front. So if you were halted or anything, they saw immediately you were Jewish, even if you had your star. But by the way, my star, if you ever want to see it, it's in the museum in New York. But anyway, so there were jobs available through the Jewish Council. The Jewish Council did good work. They helped people, and they established certain Jewish stores. Like my father got a job as a greengrocer, and he worked from 3 to 5 in a Dutch greengrocer. And then people had these little jobs, got a stamp on their ID card which said, and this was in German, "Ich habe dieses Ausweis ist bis auf weiteres vom Arbeit in Deutschland zurückgestellt," which means if you had this card, the key word was bis auf weiteres, which means until further notice. So we were visited, if you want to use the word, in the night by people ringing the doorbell and said, "We'll come to take you." And my father would show that stamp on his passport, on his ID card, and it worked. But eventually you heard it wouldn't work. So we decided we better go into hiding. We had places reserved, so to speak. But how did you get a place to go into hiding? Well, through my father's business, he had a furniture store in The Hague. There were two old little ladies, they were sisters, never married, lived in an apartment, and they had told my father, they said, "Mr. Mayor, if you ever need a place to hide, you're welcome to stay with us." My parents decided to stay together. My sister and I were going to split up. Who were the people that found these places? Well, imagine the universities were closed, so there were thousands of students, youth between 20 and 25, that had nothing to do, and they felt a good national feeling, and they were going to help Jewish children. And they actually secured places for people to go into hiding. And the person that actually found my place, that's another long story I can't go into, I knew her, Gisela Zeunzen, which you mentioned in the introduction. So we finally decided we better go. That was a tough day. It was May 23rd, 1943. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang, and they came to pick up my father. Imagine saying goodbye to your father, never knowing, will I ever see you? Will you survive? Where are you going? I didn't know where they were going to be going. And so he left. A little bit later, they came to pick up my sister. Well, my sister and I were always very close. She's still alive at 98 and lives in Florida. So we didn't know what to say to each other. We just hugged, and she left. Then about 2 in the afternoon, they came to get my mother. I said, "I can't go," is what she said. "I can't leave Anita here by herself, waiting, will Gisela make it? You never know." And she protested, but they said, "Well, if you don't go now, I can't come back." So my mother left. I'm sitting here, 13 years old, on the 4th floor of an apartment in the Jewish ghetto, not knowing, will Gisela come? I have no idea. What if she doesn't come? What do I do? I kept looking out of the window and see if she was going to come. Imagine, 13 years old. I'm sure many of you have had 13-year-old children. They're not ready to be on their own, but there was no choice. But the bell rang and Gisela came. So we took the train, and I had a little suitcase, that's all I could take. And of course, I had removed the Star of David from and it felt really kind of funny, but I hid it. I always kept it, and as I say it in the museum, I hid it. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. Anyway, we went back by train, and I was going to go to a town called Acht, A-C-H-T. It's a very small town right on the old highway between Eindhoven and 's-Hertogenbosch. It was about 5 miles north, not quite 5, 3 miles north of Eindhoven. And we stood there. There's 2 sets of 4 houses together, like a fourplex, and nothing else. There were fields in the back and fields in the and there you stand, and you look at this house. Who do you think the people are? Will they like me? Will I like them? How long will I be here? You just don't know. But we rang the doorbell, and they knew, of course, I was going to be coming. And it turned out, it all worked out beautifully. The people were, they never finished high school. The gentleman was a mechanic with Philips. He was terrific, could do all kinds of things. The woman had never finished high school either. But they had a son who was, I didn't look at the clock. They had a son who was 1 year older than I am. I was, well, he still would have been if he was still alive. And he was in high school a year ahead of me. He was willing to bring books home and help me study. You know, I didn't want to lose, I didn't know how long I was going to be there. And what if I lost two years at least of high school, and I'd go back and I'm with kids that are 2 years younger than me? That was below my pride. So I studied. I ignored things I didn't like, but I concentrated a lot on math and science and some languages, because we had 4 languages in school at that time. And that worked out pretty well. But I stayed there. I was very lucky because I was in the southern part of Holland, and I don't know how many of you remember how the war went, but the southern part of Holland was liberated through the Battle of the Bulge. The first American and second British Army came, and we were liberated September the 18th, 1944, not knowing that my parents, I should tell you, I had contact with my parents through a medium. There was one old friend, a non-Jewish friend in The Hague. He was a lawyer, and he knew exactly where the 3 addresses where we were in hiding. And I could write to my parents, to his address, and he would forward it, and that's how we kept in touch with each other. But as of September of 1944, there was no way that mail went through or anything. So I never knew that my parents got caught, and they were sent to Westerbork, which is, shouldn't have drank the water. They were transported in animal cars on the train for 4 days without any sanitary possibilities. It was awful. They were in Westerbork, which they were lucky. That was what they call a transport camp in Holland, where people that were picked up in roundups would wait for the next transport to go to the camps. But there was a railroad strike, so they never left. And eventually my parents were liberated while they were in the camp. But things really, what I did afterwards, I was there in September and no contact. My father had been able to send some money monthly or 3 monthly, I don't know how it went, because the people really couldn't afford the extra person to feed. But that stopped, of course, because there was no contact. But, they would never put me out on the street. I stayed there until I finally met my parents. It's another long story how all that went, but through the Red Cross, it all worked together. And at the end of April, they were liberated. Actually, before there was May 5th was the date actually that the war was over. But I had gone to school. I decided that, and the people, of course, wanted me to. I just tell them I need to go. That's the 4th grade of high school. I went to the principal, explained my situation. He said, well, if you want to, he said, what grade should you be? And I said, 4th grade, that's the 4 years of high school. The counting is different there. And he said, well, give it a try. So I did pass. So after we all got together, eventually, in May of 1945, we were all together, and we couldn't believe it. Our life started again. It took a long time before we finally got settled, but I finished last year of high school in Amsterdam, entered the University of Amsterdam, where I left with a degree in geology, and I left with my best friends my best friend I ever met, and I lived with him for 71 years. We established a family, and we're happily ever after. I hope it gave you an insight. I hope I didn't go over. Thank you.
Could we not just stay here for the next couple hours? Anita just asked, was that okay? Can we let her know how okay that was? So we're going to shift a little bit into an interactive piece, because being Yom HaShoah, right, the Holocaust Remembrance Day, it asks something very profound of us, not only to mourn, but to carry the names and the stories, the faces of the 6 million Jews and millions of others who were murdered, so that the lives are never reduced to a statistic or a footnote. But memory at its most powerful is not a weight that buries us. It is a torch. The survivors who rebuild their lives, who told their stories, who raised children and grandchildren, modeled something extraordinary, that it is possible to hold grief and hope at the same time, in the same moment. So the invitation is for you to turn to someone next to you, maybe 2 or 3 people, and we've given you 3 prompts. Now we know we're limited in our time this evening, and I hope that you'll take them home and use it as some fodder for your own thoughts in terms of what does it mean, right, to have hope, or the weight of memory. Our students earlier met and were talking about memory, how significant it is. And perhaps just share a story or an image or a piece of Holocaust history that has stayed with you. And why do you think you've held on to it? What does it ask of you? Or perhaps you and your partner will be more intrigued by thinking about what is the role of being a witness to a witness, right? As the generations of survivors grow smaller, the responsibility of remembrance shifts to us. So who taught you to remember? Was it a grandparent or a teacher? Sometimes we remember through literature or a movie, right? So how did that way of carrying the history shape your own memory? And then there's that notion of hope. When we started our program today with the beautiful youth choir, did that not infuse us with a sense of hope? Thank you. Thank you for lifting us in such a beautiful way. So we'll give you I think we can take maybe 8 minutes. Find somebody near you and just see, where are you attracted to a question here? Talking about memory, about hope, about being a witness, and I'll call you back. thank one another for being witnesses, for speaking from your heart and listening from your heart. It's really beautiful to hear the din of people in our community who are willing to step in to that place of meaning. So we'll continue the program. Good evening. I'm Rabbi Ruthie Gelfarb with Har HaShem, and I'm going to read part 1 of the poem Bashert. It's in your program if you care to follow along on page 4. These words are dedicated to those who died. These words are dedicated to those who died because they had no love and felt alone in the world, because they were afraid to be alone and tried to stick it out, because they could not ask, because they were shunned, because they were sick and their bodies could not resist the disease, because they played it safe, because they had no connections, because they had no faith, because they felt they did not belong and wanted to die. These words are dedicated to those who died, because they were loners and liked it, because they acquired friends and drew others to them, because they took risks, because they were stubborn and refused to give up, because they asked for too much. These words are dedicated to those who died, because a card was lost and a number was skipped, because a bed was denied, because a place was filled and no other place was left. These words are dedicated to those who died, because someone did not follow through, because someone was overworked and forgot, because someone left everything to God, because someone was late, because someone did not arrive at all, because someone told them to wait and they just couldn't wait any longer. These words are dedicated to those who died. Bashert.
You can find the words of Ephraim Prepachik on page 5. I don't know about a solo. I think hearing all of our voices would really enhance the story that we continue to tell of the Holocaust, so we'll remember. So Anita, thank you. You added another story to our repertoire of Holocaust stories, so we will always remember. And the kids who are here, young adults, you'll be able to say, I heard Anita, a survivor of the Holocaust, tell the story, and it really happened. Ephraim Pripacek is a story of the rabbi who sits with students and teaches the Aleph Bet, the Aleph Beis. And each letter carries a story. Each letter has a tear. Each letter has a legacy. I'm named after an uncle, Mordechai Chaim, who died in Auschwitz. And my father told me the story of his uncle, the Malamed, his uncle who was really learned. And he would sing this song. And my father would sing this song to me and to my brothers. So I feel honored to sing it, and I know some people know this song. So if you feel it, just sing along. Eufen Pripetschek brennt a fire und his Stub is heiß. Und der Rabbi lehren kleine Kinderlech, der Malef Beis. Und der Rabbi lehren kleine Kinderlech, der Malef Beis. Solche Kinderlech gedenkt Teire, was sie lernen da. Solche noch einmal und Tag noch einmal, kommet alle vor. Solche noch einmal und Tag noch einmal, kommet alle vor. Os ihr werdet, Kinder, dem Kolle schleppen, euch gemutschet sein. Sollt ihr von euch jos keuer scheppen, guckt in sein rein. Sollt ihr von euch jos keuer scheppen, guckt in sein rein. The refrain. Such a kinderlech, gedenket Teire, was ihr lernen da. Solche noch einmal und Tag noch einmal, kommet alle vor. Solche noch einmal und Tag noch einmal, kommet alle vor.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Charna Rosenholz, President of Haver, and along with Rabbi Eva, I really want to just say how joyous and wonderful it is to see how many people here willing to remember, and along with Rabbi Cantor Mark, really want to speak to the young people that are here. Bless you for your willingness. I don't know who's still here. If you've seen a kid that's left, just let them know coming here and showing up and bravely facing this part of the past is really a beautiful thing. And all the cantors and rabbis here in our council are so touched and moved to be here together with you tonight. Beshert, part 2. It's on page 6. But I invite you to listen with your heart and not your eyes. These words are dedicated to those who survived. Yes, these words are dedicated to those who survived. Because their second grade teacher gave them books. Because they did not draw attention to themselves and got lost in the shuffle. Because they knew someone who knew someone else who could help them and bumped them into a corner on a Thursday afternoon because they played it safe. Because they were lucky. These words are dedicated to those who survived, because they knew how to cut corners, because they draw attention to themselves and always got picked, because they took risks, because they had no principles and were hard. These words are dedicated to those who survived, because they refused to give up and defied statistics, because they had faith and trusted in God, because they expected the worst and were always prepared, because they were angry, because they could ask, because they mooched off others and saved their strength, because they endured humiliation, because they turned the other cheek, because they looked the other way. These words are dedicated to those who survived, because life is a wilderness and they were savage, because life is an awakening and they were alert, because life is a flowering and they blossomed, because life is a struggle and they struggled, because life is a gift and they were free to accept it. These words are dedicated to those who survived. Beshert.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Mark Soloway from Congregation B'nai Shalom. As we're able to, I invite us to rise, only if you're able to in your body. And I was very moved by what Rabbi Lynn said before we lit these candles about imagine how much light there would be in the world with 6 million candles. So as I chant this traditional El Malei Rachamim, this memorial prayer, let's imagine ourselves lighting 6 million candles in blessed and loving memory of all of those whose lives were taken so brutally during the Shoah. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hametzeh Menucha Nochona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזו הרקיע מזהירים את נשמות כל אחינו בני ישראל, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנטבחו ושנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהגו ושהלכו לעולמם, בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרו בצרו החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על פיזורי משכבותיהם, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the souls of all our people, the men, women, and children of Israel who were slaughtered, who were gassed, who were burned to ashes, who were wrenched out of this world and have now gone to their eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved ones find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
It is said that even after a person dies, they still live if they are remembered. But what happens if entire families are wiped out, as happened to so many that were murdered in the Holocaust? It's up to those of us who know the sad and the horrible history to remember those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. Tonight, we will say Kaddish as a Jewish community and remember in our hearts all those whose family and friends perished in the Holocaust, and especially those with no one to remember them. We ask you all to please join us. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, B'yamad Divrach Chirutei, B'yamlik Malchutei, B'chayachon Uvimechon, Uvchayei Kol Beit Yisrael, Be'alma, excuse me, sorry, I lost my place. Be'al Gama Uzvizman Kariv Ve'meru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah, Mevarak Le'olam Umei Ilmaya, Yit Barak Vayishtabach, Vayit Ba'ar Vayit Ramam, Vayit Naseh, Vayit Adar, Vayit Ale, Vayit Alal, Shemei Dekudisha Barechu, Le'ela Min Kol Berchata Vishirata, Tush Vechata V'nechemata, Da'amiran B'yalma, V'yemru, Amen. Yehei Shalom Arabah Shemayim, V'kayim Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'yemru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mamav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'yemru, Amen. You may be seated.
I just want to say a quick thank you to all who participated, to all who helped make tonight happen, to all of you who came to bear witness to those who spoke, to those who shared. Thank you. As we come to the close of this sacred evening, we carry with us the profound weight and beauty of what we have shared. Names that will not be forgotten, places that remain etched in memory, voices that still speak to us across time, silences that hold their own truth, grief that honors what was lost, and resilience that lights our path forward. Tonight we remember not only how precious lives were taken, but how fully and beautifully they were lived. We are reminded that memory is not merely something we hold close to our hearts. It is a living flame we carry forward together from generation to generation. And so even after all we have witnessed and felt this evening, we do not conclude in silence alone. We rise. I invite the members of Haver to come forward as we join together in our closing song. I also want to invite our youth choir back up here, those who were able to stay a little longer, who didn't have early bedtimes. We invite you to please lift your voices with ours. If you don't know the tune, you're invited to simply listen, to breathe deeply, and to let the music embrace and hold you. The song is in your program. May this song become our collective breath, a memory of healing, of sacred connection, and of enduring hope. May we rise with memory as our guide. May we rise with courage as our companion. And may we rise always together. Just one sec. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to Amen. Thank you. Thank you for working on the program.